Hey everyone, it's Hairyfrankfurt, and some of you may or may not know that I actually hired a coach to help me with recovery, because recovery was this whole new world to me that I had no idea how to navigate myself, and I figured what a better way to do it than with the guidance of someone who has done it before. So, let me introduce you to my coach, Emmalene Pawlak. She is a health and wellness coach based out of Perth, Western Australia. She has gone through a lived experience with an eating disorder herself, and we basically just sat down to talk all about diet culture, eating disorder recovery, things that people don't realize are eating disorders, and just dieting in general. So given that everyone is probably starting their New Year's resolutions to lose weight, maybe you should watch this, starting with the first question, which is, what are your thoughts around people having eating disorders and creating content? Because at the height of your disorder, I'm sure you remember, you don't want anyone to know that you're sick.
Yeah.
And there are some creators, and I'm sure you know who I'm alluding to, and I won't say their name because bless their soul, It's so obvious to people watching that they have an illness because it has a physical component of a mental illness, and it just ends up being pro-ana content. So I don't know how, like, if you have...
So I feel like, I feel like if you're still battling and you're still in the nitty-gritty part of the eating disorder, you have to, but you want to create content because it's potentially going to keep you accountable as you recover, or it's just maybe a nice form of expression. But you need to be careful about almost giving suggestions and advice if you're still in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So I feel like, for me, I've only felt comfortable giving, suggestions and advice to people this year because I just know in my gut. I can't remember the last time I purged. I can't remember the last time I binged. I can't remember the last time I heard an eating disorder dialogue. And I remember just thinking at the start of the year, fuck, I'm recovered. I think I can start telling people how I did this now.
Yeah.
So I think for me personally, when I was right in the middle of it, I was searching for, it's almost like you're wanting to search for other recovery stories, but while you're still in it, it's so easy for you to get caught up in the pro-ana content. It's so easy for you to still get caught up in the content of how can I potentially live and manage an eating disorder.
Yeah. And I will admit that I'm still very kind of early days in stable recovery, because I mean, when I was in my disorder and I was like seeking out some form of like, what does recovery look like, everyone was like, you'll have 100 pseudo recovery attempts, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna do this thing and it'll all be better. And I did that thing and realized it was still the eating disorder. Like, it was pseudo recovery so bad, and now I can finally say that I'm in recovery and I'm not talking out my ass and it's not the eating disorder speaking. But even now, I still find myself body checking, and I still find myself falling into behaviors that on the surface are probably super benign, right? And I'm not body checking or weighing because I feel like I need to lose weight. It's just this, I need to know what my body's doing. And it, for a person who is still in their disorder and still actively restricting or, enacting the harmful behaviors, that is damaging to the people who view that content, because you're seeing a person who is body checking and is at an unwell position, and there's no way you can view that content and not feel some type of way. You know what I mean?
No, I feel though it's interesting because Nat interviewed me on Friday for something, and I brought you up, and I said to him, I remember saying to him, I feel like from when I first started working with Kate to now, I said to him, I feel like she's right at the tail end of like full recovery.
Right.
Because I feel like this is the way that I feel. I feel like there is a gradual, almost uphill battle, and then it's almost like you get to a point where it's like a flick of a switch and then you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
That's how it is. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill transition of behaviors, of mindset, of dialogue, and then it's almost like it's a switch. That's what happened. It was like I was like, fuck, I'm right at the tail end. I can still sort of, I might have purged, once every 3 months last year or once every whatever, but then it was almost like a switch went off, and then I was like, fuck, I'm recovered.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of groundwork that had been done first, and I feel like that you're coming out of the end of the groundwork, and now waiting for a switch to go with you.
Yeah. And I think
That's what it is.
with like the first attempts at recovery, and I say attempts plural because there are so many that people will make, it's kind of like you're doing something that doesn't feel natural. And I remember
Yes.
once I went to the grocery store, and this is something that, like, the little things in recovery that you don't realize are signs of recovery. I don't hate the grocery store anymore. I don't
Yep.
have a panic attack every time I go. I don't
Yep.
go 3 times a day because I bought something stupid and forgot to buy the things that I needed because I was, like the sensory overload of being around that much food was really hard for me to cope up until, like you said, very recently. You're doing this thing that doesn't feel natural, it feels unfamiliar. And then I remember the amount of times I said, why am I doing this? And I would literally pause because I could not think of a reason why I was doing it. And now, it's not that I have a reason why I'm doing recovery. It's just that I don't need to question it. There's never a time where I'm like, why am I doing this? It doesn't feel unnatural anymore. It's
Yeah.
You're right, it is like a switch where it doesn't feel like you're doing anything actively.
It's so interesting that you bring up the shopping center thing, because I had a consult with a new client on Friday,
Yeah.
and we had a bit of a chat, and then she started to, I don't actually think that she had labeled it as an eating disorder. I saw all of the traits and I put it out there to her and I said, does this feel a little bit dysfunctional and disordered to you? This is potentially, disordered eating. And then she started crying and she said, because she's a normal person. She thinks she's a normal person with just a few little issues. And she just said, I go to the grocery store, and she said, I get so anxious and I just freak out so much. And after the consult, she messaged me and said, that she's excited to get started with me. But she also said, she said to me, I don't know how to eat.
Yeah. And that,
And I remember you and I having this exact same conversation, because I said to her, one of the things I said to her in the consult is I said, you need to stop tracking your food. You need to eat normal. I was, talking to her about intuitive eating. I was talking to her about, just looking at each meal and having a balance of carbs, fat, and protein, having a balance of, lots of different things. And I could see her listening to me. And then later on, she just messaged me and she just went, fuck, I've forgotten how to eat. And that's what happens. You forget how to eat, what to eat, why you're eating, how much to eat. And it's almost like, because your whole approach to food just becomes, okay, I need to control and restrict everything so that I am getting smaller. And when you start to detach from the need to get smaller, it's like, well, fuck, how do I eat and what do I eat?
Yeah. This kind of brings me back to one of the topics we mentioned in our last call, which is society has us so primed to live in this diet culture to the point we have teas, which I personally love a good cup of tea, right? T2 is my heaven. But skinny teas, why is skinny a marketing ploy? Like, as recovering eating disorder people, you and I can probably both agree on the fact that the, restricting and then eating a large amount of food, like cheat days. Cheat days are commonplace. You go to a gym and you get a PT, they prescribe you a diet which they shouldn't do in the first place, and then they tell you, but don't worry, when you're bored of eating chicken breast because it's fucking boring to eat nothing but chicken breast every day for your life, you get this thing called a cheat day where you eat more calories than you should ever even consume in a week, and then you don't have to regret it because you're going back to restricting. That's
where binging starts.
Yes.
I didn't actually know what the word binge was until 2012, and I did my first bodybuilding comp. Same thing. I remember watching this part in your other eating disorder YouTube video. And I remember thinking, my coach had me on such a restrictive diet and then said, oh, but on the weekend you get a cheat day. And I remember I had never forced myself to eat until the point of feeling sick before. I was inhaling a whole jar of peanut butter in one sitting because during the week I had been so malnourished and I was overtraining and undereating that came this cheat day, I was stuffing food into my body for that entire 24-hour period as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. And then I started to hear the word binge, and I was like, is that what this is? But
Yeah.
it's almost like this whole. I feel that cheat day is a label for binge day.
It is. And it's
It is.
person studying psychology. I recognize that bulimia, in terms of its diagnostic criteria, is having at least one instance of binging and purging, or any form of, compensatory behavior, which, by the way,
Yeah.
over-exercising, taking diet pills, taking laxatives,
Laxatives.
purging physically. These, or suppositories, are another thing that people do, and I'm not frowning because I want to shame people who have these behaviors. I'm frowning because I feel for the people who, and we've both been there, who feel the need to do that. To have a weekly cycle of, I'm going to restrict, which is a compensatory behavior, and then I'm going to eat so much that, I'm 5'2", and I wouldn't tip 55 kilos, and I'm sorry for numbers. How was I sitting down to 8 plates of sushi and then having a chocolate sundae and a milkshake?
Yep.
What?
Like, I know, it's ridiculous.
And at the end still being like, I could go some pizza. I remember I had a photo shoot with my friend Stephanie, and I vlogged it because the whole joke was I'd go into a midday photo shoot without eating anything for over 24 hours. And then afterwards, I would treat everyone to pizza, ribs, and wings, and I would eat the most. And I'm the smallest out of everyone. And so another thing that I've noticed in recovery, which I use air quotes every time because I don't feel like I'm in recovery because it's not a fight. I just feel like I'm back to normal. Which, again, not going to get emotional. But you get hungry when you don't eat. And to the whole idea of fighting your hunger, and if your body says, I want brownies, if I wanted brownies, I could be like, yeah, I'm allowed them. I don't have to fight that. There's nothing stopping me from having brownies. But the whole diet culture, and I've never been a bitch to hate diet culture, but diet culture does put you in this mindset of not seeing food as just sustenance.
Yeah. I feel like it's a very complex entanglement, this diet culture, because I feel like it stems back to, I don't know the root of it, because if you look at, some celebrities like Marilyn Monroe, she was desired and she's not thin, she's curvy. So at some point in society, there has been someone or something that has driven this, that the ideal female has a small waist and is small and thin, and diet culture has very successfully played on this notion of women desiring to be thin, and if we can't be thin, we will do anything to become that way. So there's a fear there, there's a need there, and I feel like diet culture, the amount of friends and clients and people that I've met who, and you and I are probably the same, have done anything to try and be slim, to try and get smaller. It's as soon as the diet industry uses something like fat burner, skinny tea, detox, as soon as they use those words, we're like, sign me up, sign me the fuck up, without realizing that we're essentially, all of this diet culture stuff, all of these supplements, all these buzz diet fads, all we're doing, now that I'm out of it and I can, have sort of like a different perception and perspective of it, is it's essentially forcing us to not trust our natural bodily cues. It's forcing us to, as women, to ignore our hormonal needs, to ignore our hunger needs, to ignore if we're using our brain a lot, it's natural that our brain is going to start craving glucose, which is carbohydrates. And it's almost like we're being told to ignore certain bodily cues and to just not trust our body. And I feel like you have a look at an eating disorder as like a cycle, right? So it's like we start up here, and it's we trust ourselves, we nourish ourselves, we trust our bodily cues for activity, for sport, for daily functioning. Then the diet industry comes in and says, no, you've got it wrong. We can give you things to kill your appetite We can give you things to make you shit more than normal, to make you pee more than normal,
Yeah.
to make your metabolism faster than what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Then it's almost like we go through all that and we start to fluctuate and we start to almost shift our natural hormones, all of our natural neurological messages that tell us when to eat and why. And then it's almost like what an eating disorder essentially is in terms of, recovery or coming out of it, is learning to trust yourself again and just getting back to the start of, I trust my body and its natural cues, because the thing is, the human body doesn't want us to be overweight, doesn't want us to be unhealthy, nor does it want us to be underweight and malnourished. So the human body knows what the fuck it's doing, especially if you're exercising regularly, you're using your brain a lot, you're, moderately active, you're working. The human body knows what to do to keep you in a state of glowing health.
Yeah.
So why the fuck are we trying to alter that natural process of metabolism, hormones, menstruation? Why would we ignore our natural internal knowing of how to be healthy human beings?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And it's funny, I mean, I think there's like a much broader conversation here that is probably something that, people looking at the history of humanity, because going super like macro view, like zooming out of even just like something as minuscule as, and I'm going to say minuscule, it's still massive, women feeling the need to diet and look a certain way. And just the fact that the physical body is so much of how we market, how we interact, how we socialize, like the way a person, not just women, looks is for some reason super important to a lot of people. And I'm sure there's some evolutionary reason as to why that is, and it's probably meant to be important for some reason or another, but we've made it so, we've kind of taken it away from this natural thing to how can we make the human mind, the front of the brain that built, nuclear war, like has mad wars on everything, created the Industrial Revolution and then made schools so that people become good machine workers, and then, all these things that humans have completely destroyed. And it's weird to think that humans is another one of them. Like, humans have killed humans and destroyed the natural order of humanity in that. Yeah, I don't know. It just...
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about, this collective importance on physicality. And I would love to, now that it's in my awareness, I'm probably going to try to figure it out. I would love to know where it stemmed from, because I think I mentioned to you in our last call, I had a profound realization lately that from a very young age, I made a correlation between physical beauty and importance. And that's where all my dysfunction started. When I was at dancing, when I was at school, I started to notice, hang on, I can potentially be deemed as more significant if I portray this way. Yeah, physically. And it's so interesting, because majority of the work that successful people do, and, the work that I do now, is based purely on my internal abilities.
Yeah.
Purely on my internal abilities. And I mentioned this to you as well in our call. I feel like physical and external, we'll call it beauty and attractiveness, I think is dependent on how well you do internal work. Like we were talking about that light and that glow that people
having
have.
Your shine.
When they're aligned with things that are true to them. And I feel like once that happens, the external changes. And I feel like, I'm not sure if maybe the prevalence of social media maybe stimulated this fascination and this obsession that we have with physical beauty.
Well, remember,
because there's a lot of comparison happening on social media.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, eating disorders thrive off comparison. It's this big old competition. It's a wank fest to who can die the quickest. But before social media, there was video media, and before video media, it was print media. There's always been some form of like advertising people or using people to advertise products. Because, when they made the car, they found out that a man standing next to the car apparently didn't sell it quite as well as having a woman standing next to the car. And cars have been around since.
Okay. So it's like centralized.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so,
Right.
and that's another thing that maybe I have a very skewed view on that because I don't find myself to be normally sexed. I don't know if that's going to make sense, but like, here's a hilarious story. And by hilarious, I mean it's actually quite sad. I was walking across the street as a pedestrian with the ability to walk across the street, right? There was no danger to me at all until a Holden sped up to kind of almost hit me and then slowed down and said, "You're lucky you're," I can't remember if it was pretty or hot or cute. Literally yelled out the window to tell me that I'm lucky I was attractive to him because apparently if I was ugly, he wouldn't have slowed down. That was basically what he was implying because I was walking across the street because he was nowhere near me, and then he sped up because he saw me on the street, then slowed down, and then as I got, you know, because I ran, because I was like, fuck, I'm going to get hit by this goddamn car. He goes, "You're lucky, you're cute." And I was like, are you literally implying that you were going to hit me if I was ugly? Like, how is that?
Yeah.
And
you know what I think it is, now that I think about it? This is obviously going deep spiritually, but I feel like it makes sense. If you have a look at the way that society and culture has progressed and developed over the years, I think that we can agree that consciousness and awareness has reduced. It's coming back up now. It's, to be honest, it's elevating now, but I feel like self-awareness, consciousness, internal knowing, spirituality, it went through a period there where it wasn't really mainstream media. It's very Eastern culture, and we're very westernized, right? Westernized is, you know, marketing, products, diet culture.
the physical.
Yeah, and I feel like when consciousness and spirituality took the back burner, that's when I feel physicality became more prominent. Because if you think about it, people like you and I who are, you know, a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more, you know, our consciousness is higher, we can walk into a room of people of varying backgrounds, unattractive, attractive.
I mean, those words make no sense to me because I'm like, attractiveness is how much you attract me to you, and that's a vibrational thing. Like,
thank you. Okay, this is where I'm getting at. You and I are aware that the physical, it's almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's almost
this
irrelevant.
is a means to an ends.
This is a vessel.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the physical is irrelevant, and everything with consciousness and spirituality is vibration, frequency, and energy.
Yeah.
And I feel like as society and culture has developed, we as a collective have become more ignorant, which means we are closed off to that intuition, that internal knowing. We are closed off to feeling vibration, energy, and frequency, and instead we are looking at the surface, which is the physical.
Yeah, because that's what we're sold. We're sold on that.
Exactly. So the ignorance, the collective ignorance, I feel, has just fueled social media, the diet industry, women, and their need to be hyper focused on the way that they look. I mean, you know, like a health coach, right? So I'm very pro, I don't even use the word diet. I'm pro self-awareness in terms of, hey, what makes you feel good?
Exactly.
So what
Thank you.
What makes you shit once a day? What makes you sleep soundly? What gives you energy to perform the activities that you want to perform?
Yeah.
Right. What gives you energy during the day? What makes you feel good mentally and keeps you focused?
Yeah.
They're the foods that you need to eat.
Yeah.
For everyone, it's going to be different. So obviously we're in these physical vessels, but we're on this planet in this human experience for a long time.
Yeah.
So if I want my bones to stay really healthy, I'm going to lift weights. And if I'm going to lift weights, I need carbs, I need energy, but I also need enough food for recovery. But also I'm a woman and I enjoy ice cream and I get and I enjoy chocolate. So I'm going to balance my needs as a woman hormonally, energetically, physically, mentally. And if you focus on that as a whole, as what makes you feel good in terms of performance, focus, sleep, shitting, libido, you're going to look physically, you're going to look like you're glowing health anyway.
And one thing I was going to say a little while ago is that an eating disorder doesn't necessarily have to fit the well-marketed view of thin people, right? So you and I are both privileged to have socially acceptable bodies, right? Not everyone with an eating disorder has a restrictive type or a, you know, compensatory type. There is binging disorder, and
Yep.
And, you know, and it's not just women either. There's also, I can't remember the exact name for it, but men seem to be more affected by, there is a disorder, and if I remember the name, I'll put it on the screen when I edit this, where they are obsessed with musculature gains, right? And having the most musculature body and being excessively large. And, you know, there's even orthorexia, you know, there's a whole bunch of disorders. And for people in larger bodies, it's the same thing. It's not about, you know, you need to change anything. You just need to honor your body. And when I was a personal trainer, whenever I had someone come in with me, because I know that most of the other PTs were like, how much do you want to weigh? What's your body fat now? What are you eating? How can I change how you eat? How can I change how you live your life? For me, my question was, what do you want to be able to do? What do you want to be able to do? And so if I had a person who was rather excessively overweight, I'd say, how many trips from your car to your front door would it take you with your groceries? How can I help you do that in one? How can I help you get up the stairs without huffing and puffing? How can I help you keep up with your kids? How can I keep you as an underweight woman healthy enough that you don't have bone problems? Or whatever you want to be able to do. For women, sometimes it was, you know, I want to be able to do a pull-up, because that's just something that most women can't do, and that's an accomplishment. And there is something to be said for the fact that there's just this entire system around, you know, I mean, my whole disordered view of foods and things was that, you know, I saw the popular kids eating Dunkaroos and Nutella sandwiches and fruit roll-ups, and I was like, okay, I'll eat those and nothing but those. And then I was eating to kind of feel better about myself, and then I realized I was getting kind of chonky, and then I decided, hang on, they're also thin. And you kind of, as a child especially, and I feel so bad for children of people with eating disorders, because I have to say I'm one of them, you learn how you view the world and yourself in your childhood, and where you get your acceptance from, and where you get your worth. How do you see yourself as worthy? My mum was constantly on diets. She was constantly asking me, do I look fat in this? I am a child. What does the word fat even mean? Like, and it's the
It's almost like, as well, just what you were talking about, you know, when you were young and you saw what the other kids were eating.
Yeah.
I feel like if we're to peel back that other layer of disordered eating, it's like that desire to fit in.
Yes.
It's that desire to fit in to some sort of cultural or social
acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's almost what is driving it as well, because I remember during my disordered eating days, I didn't want to be model thin, but I wanted to look like a fitness model. Yeah. And I didn't realize that these girls that competed, they were severely undereating, overtraining, and binging and purging.
Yeah.
I just wanted to look like them.
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I wanted to look. That's where I was trying to fit in. I was like, okay, I'm quite short, I'm stocky, I can probably pull off fitting into that mold, the fitness model mold, because I'm never going to be like a Victoria's Secrets model. So okay, this is what I'm going to try and make myself look like, and I'm going to fucking do anything to fit in there, because I wanted to be known as, okay, I'm Emmalene, that fitness looking chick. That is the identity that I want, so I'm going to try and force myself to fit into that mold. So I feel like people with disordered eating as well, it's like we're trying to force ourselves to fit in somewhere.
Yeah.
Society has conditioned us to think we have to fit in somewhere.
Well, I will say that there's nothing wrong with requiring or desiring acceptance. Like, if you look at humans prior to Homo sapiens, we were tribe animals, and we still are. We're pack animals, you know. We're meant to be in it. I mean, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. We've become these nuclear families, and we still need that acceptance. We still need that social validation. We need to know that we belong to a group. We need that. That's why gangs exist, right? I'm just saying that the way we seek out our group membership and our social acceptance, and where we get it and how we're taught to find it, because this disorder, and by disorder, I just mean the lack of natural, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, this disorder, I say that with a capital T and a capital D, not referring to any eating disorder or, you know, mental illness, just the disorder of society is transgenerational. And if your parents never knew where to get their acceptance, how the hell are they going to teach you? If their parents never knew how to get their social acceptance, how are your parents ever going to learn? How are you supposed to live in a broken world and end up not broken?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
100%. I feel like it's almost like, obviously, like there's no one you don't blame anyone for mental health or mental illness. There's
yeah.
one person to blame, which makes it challenging because I feel like it is this, it's almost a global and social issue that the collective has become so, like what you said, disordered. We're being pulled in lots of different directions to try and fit into molds that when we're born, it's always like when we're born, we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We just have to fit into some mold that's been created by some other clique or collective. I don't really know where it's come from. And it's almost like something that I keep trying to teach my clients, and it's really hard, is if you feel like you don't fit in anywhere or you're struggling to fit in somewhere, it's because you need to create it.
Yeah.
You need to create the space that you belong. Like with me, this business I'm running, growth and development consulting, no one in Perth has heard of this. Everyone's like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, well, I saw a need in human resources for me to do this mental health work. So I've created a business where I feel comfortable and I'm attracting clients who I now consider my friends.
Yeah.
And I have created my own tribe of I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting my own, attracting my own tribe of like-minded people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I was talking about you to Nat the other day. I said, Nat, okay, yeah, Kate is a client and started as a client, and sometimes she's been hectic and I've gone, okay, this is getting hectic.
Sounds like me.
I've also said to Nat, but we talk as friends because we're on the exact same level, and we just energetically and vibration wise, we are just on the, and there's no way we would have connected socially outside of a situation like this.
Yeah.
It's our pain and our desire to try and understand and accept ourselves and the disorder of society that's ultimately brought us together. And I feel like no one is exploring or talking about this phenomena that you can create your own world and then attract others into it.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to pitch something that already exists.
Yeah. It won't make sense until I get to the end, but there's a YouTuber I follow, Think Media, and he makes a channel about how to become popular on YouTube. But regardless, his saying is always, your vibe attracts your tribe. And you need to, and for me, I can't remember what it was that reminded me of this. I think it was the book I'm reading at the moment. You need to, no, it was a YouTube video I watched. I watch a lot of YouTube. You need to be unapologetically yourself, because that is how you get people to come to you, right? Like, if you are hiding a part of yourself, how the hell are you supposed to expect anyone else to accept that part of you? If you are faking something that isn't genuine to you, don't be surprised when people come up and expect you to like that thing, right? Like, if you don't actually listen to thrash metal, don't wear thrash metal clothing and go to thrash metal gigs, because people who go to those will generally like to talk about thrash metal afterwards. Like, you need to flow where you want to go. Like, you need to, don't dim your shine.
Yeah, it's so funny you saying that. I just before this, I had my workshop with the WA Disabled Sports. And we were talking today about discrimination and dealing with conflict in general. And we kind of got off topic a bit and ended up talking about this exact thing that you've just mentioned. We were talking about, because a big issue that these guys have is that they're saying that they feel like they don't fit in and that having to force themselves to adopt certain behaviors and traits to feel like they fit in somewhere. And one of them, I said to them, I really used to struggle to make friends, and I used to struggle to feel like I fitted in. And I said it wasn't until I started to just be completely authentic and not give a fuck about the direction that took me in, that I started to attract people naturally. And it's almost like, not just with this particular population of, not just, the mentally disabled population, but I feel like it's a common theme that people don't know themselves outside of their social masks.
Yes.
Everyone is wearing a social mask.
Yep.
And when they come home, I think majority take theirs off. I mean, I know for me personally, I talk the same, I act the same, I am the same in every situation. I have some friends who are very close to me and I observe them in front of other friends, and it's quite shocking for me. And then, we might just be the two of us and they'll say, I have to be like that in front of that particular friendship group. And I just think, well, obviously that's not your group.
Yeah.
If you're having to wear this mask, that's not your group.
That's not your tribe.
No, and I feel like, I mean, if we're relating that to eating disorders, it's almost like, because obviously disordered eating, apart from the lack of self-worth and, the desire to be something, it's also a control thing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So look at it from that aspect. That's interesting as well. It's almost like we feel we're out of control in the world, but hey, we can control this one thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I mean, it's when you look at a lot of eating disorder story videos, normally they refer to kind of the introduction of when it became a problem. I didn't, because there are things that I do need to kind of hold back. But I mean, control is like, as soon as life gets chaotic and you don't know what to do, the only thing you can control is yourself. And the only thing that most people see them being able to control is how much they weigh and what they put in their mouth. That is true, and that can be really empowering as well. But in this case, normally it's, it's not healthy, because if that's the only place where you can seek solace and where you can seek joy is through controlling how much or how little you eat, it's not going to end well, because you are controlling nature. Like,
that's right.
And it hasn't worked for humans yet.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like no one is teaching us, or not enough people. There's not enough people that are teaching us how to remain calm amongst chaos, how to be unapologetically authentic, and how to create a world where we feel comfortable. Because the world that I've created for myself, where I feel comfortable, you might not feel comfortable here. My friends might not feel comfortable here, but I do. And because of that, I'm my authentic self towards everyone, and I'll attract whoever is on the same vibration as me. And it just happens organically and naturally anyway. And it's almost like when you start to, like what you said, when you start to try and control nature, which is essentially, okay, food, our energy, because as humans, the psyche doesn't want to be anxious. The psyche doesn't want to be stressed. The psyche doesn't want to be starved or malnourished.
And just on that point, the amount of people who don't understand mental health or mental illness, and they look at someone with an eating disorder and they just say, well, why don't you just eat more? I mean, this is, again, stereotypical, like the restrictive types. And what they don't realize is no one chooses to be miserable 24 hours a day. There is something that is causing that, right? And just something that is slightly related, because I was going to ask you, how would you teach those things? Because for me, I know that with my depression and my mental illness and mental chaos, it takes a lot. Like, I buy crystals on the reg. I'm doing incense cleansing pretty regularly. It's one of those things, if you let yourself slip, like I had this terrible habit of running through scenarios in my head and then speaking out my response out loud. And I was referring to a friend who was trying to say, they were having a very low self-esteem day, which happens. And I was trying to explain to them, no, that's how you see yourself, and you don't see yourself genuinely. And then in my head, I was articulating a scenario where I was saying, see, if I go through every single flaw from my head to my toes, here's what I would come up with. And then I stupidly decided to actually say them out loud and to run through them in my shower. So that my shower was way longer than it was meant to be. I ended up late for work. I was miserable. My Uber took 4 wrong turns on the way to work. It's a really simple drive, by the way, guys. And then I get to work and I'm in a foul mood and everything just sucked. And I was like, okay, I don't think that was a coincidence. I'm never doing that again. And I'm going to hold on to that experience so that I can explain that what you tell yourself is what is true. Yep.
Okay. I love that you've brought that up, because that was like the theme of my workshop this morning, was the internal dialogue.
Yes.
And what I try and talk to people about is your subconscious mind does not know the difference between a truth and a lie.
It absorbs everything. Marketing,
everything.
things you go
Yep.
past, everything.
Yes. Which is why this morning when I was, talking to this group of people, one of them said while we were outside doing a workout, I can't do that, I'm too fat. And I was like, don't even fucking say those words. I said every cell in your body just heard that.
Yeah.
So something that I did with the guys this morning, which I feel is applicable to everyone, and I still use this, is I helped them come up with their own unique, individualized statements.
Yeah.
So because obviously we have two selves. We have our conditioned self, which is our inner critic, and then we have our authentic self, which is essentially who we actually are deep down at our core.
Untouched by the conditioning.
Yeah, untouched. It's like an ego is on that side. Egos with conditioning as well. So you're still going to hear that inner critic, and it happens less and less though. Like mine is not very loud now. If I hear one thing, I just say my statement. I barely even have to shout the statement anymore. But something that I find is really helpful for me now, and was helpful for me in the middle of my eating disorder, was there were 3 statements that I came up with that were very unique and specific to me. So there were times when after a purge, my heart would be, you know what it's like, a regular heartbeat. You feel like you're having a heart attack or something. I'd be
chest
covered
pains, can't breathe.
Everything covered
smell like
in
vomit, covered in food.
Just disgusting. And I would sit on the tiles of my bathroom floor, and sometimes I would just sit there and just not want to get up. And one of the statements that I would say to myself, I still say it now, like just as a reminder, is be a warrior. And I would just repeat that in my head, be a warrior, be a warrior, be a warrior. And eventually I'd peel myself up off the bathroom floor and I would start again. Like I would just try again. Another one of my statements is I am worthy, the simple one. And then another one is, and this is really specific to me because this was the thing that was blocking me from transitioning into this business that I'm in now, is I thought for some reason, all the stuff that like you and I are talking about, for some reason I was like, people don't give a fuck. People aren't going to want to listen. People won't believe me. And so one of my statements is, you are worth listening to. You are worth listening to. And I try and get clients to come up with, first thing I say to them is, what's your biggest obstacle? Like, what is something that you struggle with the most? It could be self-doubt. You don't feel good enough. Like yours is your self-worth. It's your self-worth. So it's like, okay, let's come up with a statement that you might not believe it in this moment. Chances are you won't. But we need to come up with a statement that challenges that conditioned perception of yourself, and you need to repeat that motherfucker over and over and over until you'll become it. Like you will actually become it. And it's the only reason that I'm so passionate and I push it so much on people is because I'm like, you guys don't understand. I was bulimic, suicidal, not working. I was a piece of shit, and now I'm running my own business, and people are paying me to hear me say this shit because I would tell myself over and over, be a warrior, I am worthy, I'm worth listening to. And I became those things. So
one of the things that I got from a friend, and then have now kind of interpreted, or I've kind of started doing it myself and sharing it with friends as well. I call it the thesaurus game, right? Set a timer for 3 minutes and start with the word strength in thesaurus.com. And then look through that list of words that are synonyms for it and find one you resonate with. Click on it. Read that list of words. Click another one. Read that list of words. Click another one. And when the timer goes off, you'll be like, all right, I just spent 3 minutes not thinking shit about myself, and I've got a new Rolodex, or, a new arsenal of positive words in my mind, because I've spent that much time reading through positive words. And you only click on the ones that resonate with you, because those are the ones you need to hear. 3 minutes. Everyone's got 3 minutes. Everyone. Yeah. It's a song.
I love that. And something you said as well before about when we're talking about subconscious, and you just reminded me of something when you said our subconscious absorbs even advertisements, things we see, things we hear. I am so mindful of what I on Instagram, I'm only following clients, friends, family, spiritual pages, and like positive affirmation pages.
Yeah.
I mean, my housemate now owns a TV, but prior to that, I didn't have a TV in the house. I don't listen to the radio. I don't listen to the news. I'm even pedantic to the point where if I'm training, I'm so mindful of the music I'm listening to, and quite often I just listen to motivational speeches while I'm training.
Well, I mean,
you've got to feed it.
Yeah. I have my hyperpop playlist, which
I
love so much. I will admit some of the lyrics in some of the songs is really dark and morbid, but the way they paint it up in this like upbeat, positive, chiptune music it still brings me joy. And it seems really, really impossibly difficult when you're in the depths of depression to do something that brings you joy. And with eating disorders as well, it's one of those things where you're like, I don't deserve to eat. I don't deserve this thing that's good for me. I don't deserve to train in a way that makes me feel good. I mean, for me, everything that I did was consumed with how can I do this in a way that is so difficult and painful and arduous and is going to make me lose just a little bit of weight. So I would go the long way to and from anywhere. I would walk, and I would walk quickly. And I would train in ways that I thought were going to make me lose the most weight. Everything. Because I didn't think that I was worth anything else. And it's until you kind of have to force yourself to do things until it becomes like no, I do deserve it, because you've consumed some of that.
Yeah.
But it does seem really counterintuitive and just dumb to do something that's good for you because you don't think you're worth it. But then you end up realizing that you are worth it because you do it. So,
and it's interesting as well, because I remember I asked you the same question when we were talking one day, and your answer was I don't know. And I remember I said to you, but why are you not worth it? How are you different to me? And you were like, I don't know. And I was like, exactly. At what point, who told you that you're not worth it? And what makes you not worth it? Like, as humans, we're all the same.
Yeah.
We've all felt shame. We've all fucked up. We've all done things out of desperation, out of a need to survive, out of a need to deal with pain, deal with trauma. So why is it that someone like me is worth it, but someone like you isn't, when we're essentially the same thing?
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel people grapple with as well, as they feel they're just not worth it. And I think potentially they get their reasoning from comparison.
And I mean, there's no hierarchy on the importance of existence or life, right? Like, humans have this deluded notion that humans come above animals, come above plants, and then they come above germs. But we know, especially in 2020, germs are probably somewhere up here. And then everyone else is just kind of down here because we have to deal with the germs. But all jokes aside, there is no value that you can add or take away from a life, right? If it is alive, it is worth living. And if it's worth living, then it's worth looking after, you know? And as a human, if you are alive, I mean, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to actually have a full-term pregnancy. Because, I mean, the chances of a sperm meeting an egg at the right time and getting in there and actually making it into anything other than just...
Tiny. It's like 1 in something million.
Yeah.
Or billion.
Yeah. Like,
it's
how are we here, right? And
that's what I'm...
Life is so insanely, like, it's mind-boggling. And if you are alive right now, then it's because you're worth being alive and you are here. So why would you then choose to take the one life you have and spend most of your time trying to find reasons why you're not worth being in that life?
I think it's because of pain and trauma. External pain and trauma from... whether it's you've been bullied or you've been abused or you've been raised in a turbulent family, and it's like external pain and pressure creates the conditioning that we are pain. Yeah. We are pain, we are trauma, we are suffering. Yeah. And it's almost like our conditioning is being built up, but no one is teaching us how to build our consciousness up at the same time. Yeah. So that we're able to identify, no, we're not the things that have happened to us. Yeah. We're actually incredible, aware, conscious beings in these vessels that we can do whatever we want with.
Yeah.
It's almost like we fall victim to the ego and the conditioning and the inner critic too much because no one is teaching us the alternative.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for pain that happens to us, because there's a saying that I really love, and I got it from one of my friend's mothers, who is very kind of off the beaten track, new age, and and she said, if I were to give you a wilting pot plant, right? And I mean, you love your plants, so you can probably answer this question the best. I have this wilting plant. I need you to fix it, and here's your tool, and I hand you a hammer. How are you going to fix that plant with the hammer? Spoiler alert, you can't. You can't fix a plant with a hammer, right? So people have a certain set of tools that they use to kind of grow plants, to foster life, to raise children, to contribute to society. And if your tools are given to you by your parents and they haven't given you the right tools, then of course the tools you have and your abilities to provide in this society are going to be minimized. And that's not your fault. That's just the pain that you're holding because you were given a set of tools. Yeah.
It's your responsibility to seek outside of the family unit.
Yes. And I mean, if you've ever played a video game, you start off, in a lot of them, naked with no armor and your weapons suck, right? You're going to really struggle levels 1 through 5. Then you realize, hang on, I can loot and I can get new tools and I can put on armor and I can build myself up to be this badass boss walking through World of Warcraft, not specific at all. And then you actually have a fighting chance against most of the enemies, right? So you need to treat life and the tools that you have to contribute to life as if it's a video game, and go and hunt out the tools, again, metaphor for like your abilities and your approach to life and how you attack this life thing that we all get, so that you can put out the most positive thing into the world instead of just repeating the toxic sludge that you were given before, and just not even kind of being a conduit for good as opposed to a conduit for the things you already had, because we already done that. That's old news. That's cold tea. Start again. I want something fun and fresh. Like, show me what you can provide.
It's hard though, because I feel like it's very against the grain for humans to detach from the mother and father image. I'm not saying we abandon our family unit. I'll never say that. But we must detach from the mother and father image and the identity that has been placed upon us. It's like you will not grow or heal or step into your truth until you learn how to identify as an individual outside of the family unit. You continue to respect the family unit. You have mutual understanding, mutual acceptance, mutual love. However, there has to come a point where you detach from whatever generational pains, curses, or identities that you've inherited. It's your responsibility to step out of the family unit and acknowledge, okay, fuck, I'm actually an individual. And
I don't have to do that.
I don't have to do that, and I can actually be who I want to be, and I can create and generate myself and understand myself in any way. Because the only way that you'll fully understand yourself is as an individual is when you detach from the validation and the desire for the acceptance that you're trying to get from your family. So when you actually become and you start to get introspective and you start to have a look at, okay, what actually makes me feel like a good human? What can I contribute, and how can I do that in the healthiest, like, best way possible for myself and others around me, regardless of what my family think. I mean, I've told this story to you. I think I've told it to a lot of clients. If I stayed tight within my family unit, I wouldn't be running this business. I wouldn't be living where I am. I wouldn't be in the situation that I am. I probably would have graduated uni, taken a corporate job, been working behind a desk, not enjoying what I'm doing, not knowing why I'm doing it. And even now that my mum and dad, they admit to not fully understanding what I do, they just see that I'm glowing and don't give a fuck.
And I mean,
and it's hard to get there though.
and I will I will admit that not all family dynamics are the same, and maybe there will be people who don't get to that point where their parents accept and love them regardless.
Yeah.
The thing is, and I've got family members who have told me that they looked at their childhoods and they said, no, that sucked. I don't like that. I'm going to make the conscious effort to never repeat that. And that is all anyone needs to do, right? Look at the painful parts of your life, not to dwell on it, not to ruminate, not to be like, oh, look at how much the world has forsaken me. You know, it's just entropy, right? It's just chaos unfolding. This is just existence unfolding. It's just physics and chemistry just doing its thing, right? This is randomness. But what you need to do is realize that you have some impact on how you continue. Up until this point, everything that's done is done, right? You don't have to repeat that. If you want to, then do. But being mindful of what you're putting out into the universe, whether that's, you know, you were abused or assaulted or bullied or just really didn't like that your mother gave you raw meat, I don't know, whatever it is, right? You need to make the decision that you're not going to repeat it. And people who don't look at the pain that they've been through and pretend that they've never been through it or that they're perfectly fine or try to put off this mask that nothing's wrong. Bullshit. Of course there's things wrong. Yeah. Welcome to 2020. Like, welcome to human existence. There's going to be things that hurt and suck. Admit it. But don't admit it so that you can get people to feel sorry for you. Admit it because you want to acknowledge what was wrong and improve on it.
Yeah. I like to call that extreme ownership.
Yes. Yep.
Owning shit. Just owning everything that happened to you, that you witnessed, that you saw, and even owning the fact that something caused you a bit of shame, but then choosing to move on from it as well.
Well, how are you supposed to change anything if you don't admit that it happened in the first place?
That's right.
If there's nothing wrong, then you don't have to change anything. But if something did go wrong, you have to acknowledge it so that you can change it.
Yeah,
you can't just push things under the carpet and you know.
Yeah, but I think if we were to revert this back to disordered eating.
What's that? We've gone off topic? No, not me and you.
I feel like if we're to revert all of that back to disordered eating, ultimately, if you're to simplify it, I think it comes from a lack of love.
Yeah.
Whether it's you didn't receive much love, whether you don't love yourself enough. I feel like something I've noticed lately is every solution to every problem is love.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm noticing. It's love, it's self-worth, whether people have issues receiving love, whether they have issues accepting love, whether they have issues fully loving themselves. I feel like if you really have a look at it and you have a look at why you're doing what you're doing, because if you really loved yourself and you really had a lot of love. There are so many
eating disorder behaviors you wouldn't even bat an eyelid at before saying, who the hell would do that? And I think we'll have to do we'll have to do a second podcast to talk about all the disgusting things we did.
Yes. Yeah. To just prove that we did not love ourselves at that time.
Exactly. And it takes a lot to acknowledge that some things just don't represent love.
That's right.
I mean, typical millennial, Tinder is not love. A lot of the relationships we accept are not love, right? And there are some things that you do to and for yourself that can and cannot be love.
Yeah. I think that finishes the day.
Yeah.
I think we brought it back and closed it. I think
that was full circle. That was...
Yeah, everything is a cycle. Love. Love, lack of love, love again.
Yeah.